Hello, students. Welcome to today's class. Today, we are going to discuss in detail about the play The Birthday Party, written by Harold Pinter. And I'm Dr. Renuka Devi from the PG and Research Department of English, Shishada College for Women, Salem. Let us now start our today's class with the overview of our play, The Birthday Party. The author of our play, The Birthday Party, is Harold Pinter, and it belongs to the genre called Comedy of Menace and the Theatre of the Absurd. The term comedy of menace means a play in which laughter is accompanied in all situations, which will be immediately followed by an impending danger or disaster. This means that the characters in the play involve in lot of fun and laughter, which will be followed by a huge disaster. So we are very much aware of the term called absurd, which means nothing logical. So the play belongs to the period called postmodernism, which is marked by unrealistic narrators, which is often followed by unrealistic with impossible plots, games, parody, and dark humor, etc. So it is very much reflecting the characteristics of the term called absurd. The play was first performed in the year 1958. Let us now look into the brief summary of the play The Birthday Party. Petty's wife, Meg, who are the owners of the lodging house, wants to celebrate Stanley's birthday despite his protest. So, the only tenant in the lodging house is Stanley Weber, and they want to celebrate his birthday despite his wish. Two mysterious strangers, Goldberg and McCain, arrive, which disturbs the birthday party and turns Stanley's world upside down. So the strangers called Goldberg and McCain, who arrives as the new guest to the lodging house, changes the complete setup of the play and turns even the life of Stanley upside down. The major characters in the play are Petty Bowles and Meg Bowles, who are the owners of the lodging house, and Stanley Weber, the tenant, Lulu, the neighbor of the Bowles, Goldberg, and McCain, who are the strangers who arrive to the lodging house. The major themes of the play are existentialism, order and chaos, identity and power. The play is set in an English seaside town which is not far from London. While we look into the analysis of the play is an exploration of power dynamics and human psychology and has human condition been interpreted as a commentary on the threat of fascism and an allegory for human condition. So, the term fascism means nothing but political idea where government controls everything. So, the people are very much aware of the authoritative rule and regulation of the government. So, allegory, we know very well that conveying a moral message through a moral story. In a short, the play The Birthday Party is darkly comic, an unsettled portrayal of a man named Stanley who is living in a seaside boarding house run by Meg and Petty Bowles. The action of the play revolves around Stanley's birthday, which Meg insists on celebrating despite his protest. Okay, so actually, Stanley does not want to celebrate his birthday, but Meg wants to do it. Let us now look into the introduction of our playwright Harold Pinter. Harold Pinter was born on October 10th, 1930 and died on 24th December 2008. He was a British playwright, screenwriter, director, and actor. He received Nobel Prize in the year 2005. Pinter was one of the most influential modern British dramatists with a writing career that spanned more than 50 years. His best known plays are The Birthday Party, which was written in the year 1957, The Homecoming in 1964, and Betrayal in the year 1978. If we look into the biography of Harold Pinter, he was raised in London and was the only son of Jewish parents of Polish origin. After the German bomb blast on the city in the year 1940 and 41, the Pinter's family flew to London, an experience that the playwright's biography claims profoundly affecting his work. In 1948, Pinter attended the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art for just 2 terms before leaving to work as a professional actor, touring all over the United Kingdom. After several years of doing the work, he began to write plays in the mid 50s, and eventually he penned his first play, The Room, which premiered as his first piece in the year 1957. Only a year later, he produced his first full length play, that is, our play, The Birthday Party, and though it originally confounded audience, it was well reviewed and has gone down in history as a successful and influential work. Since then, he established himself as one of the critical writers associated with the theatre of the absurd and won the Nobel Prize for Literature in the year 2005. He died of liver cancer 3 years after receiving the Nobel Prize in 2008. If we look into the historical context or connection of our play, The Birthday Party, since the play The Birthday Party is intentionally set in an isolation and self contained world, so the play itself does not refer to any specific historical events. So it does not connect with any specific historical events, but still, Pinter focuses on charting the deterioration of an individual, that is an inferiority complex of an individual in an isolation, by showing the danger of giving oneself or surrendering oneself to people like Goldberg and McCain, who have come to collect Stanley on behalf of an unnamed organization. So just Pinter focuses on the mental disorder of the people in an isolated situation where they are very much ready to surrender themselves to the people who doesn't have proper proof or evidence. So this plot enables Pinter to subtly comment on the hysteria that besieged the United States during 1950s. So it gives Pinter a chance to comment on the hysteria, that is the nervous breakdown of the people which was surrounded or widespread in the United States in the year 1950, a hysteria that came to be known as McCarthyism. So, this term refers to Republican Senator Joseph McCarthy, who indicated that there was a widespread of fear in the U.S. regarding the possibility of communist overthrowing of power, despite the fact there was little evidence suggesting this might happen. There was a little chance that this condition will happen, but still the US people are very much afraid of the communist people, whether they will going to obtain their power. So this is called as McCarthyism. As such, Goldberg and McCain insisted upon taking Stanley away for an unspecified crime, echoes the accusation of treason, which means a criminal act. They were accusing Stanley for a criminal offense of killing his wife that ran rampant throughout the 50s, that was running widespread or spreading everywhere in the United States in the year 1950. So the major characters of our play are Stanley, who's the protagonist of our play, a down on his luck, a pianist, who is living in a seaside boarding house run by Meg and Betty. He's selected to celebrate his birthday and become increasingly paranoid, which means extremely nervous and worried and confused as the play progresses. So Stanley represents the individual struggling against oppressive forces. Next, we have Meg, the owner of the boarding house and a motherly figure to Stanley. She insisted on celebrating his birthday despite his protests and is easily swayed, that is, easily moved by the opinions of others. The third important character of our play is Petty Bowles. So, Petty is Meg's husband and a kind hearted boarding house owner who tries to maintain order and normality in the face of the chaos that ensues in the play. So both Meg and Petty represents the conformity and acceptance of societal norms. Petty also serves as a kind of observer and commentator on the events of the play. So next we have two strangers, Goldberg and McCain. Goldberg, a mysterious and menacing, a harmful man who arrives at the boarding house with his partner McCann. He claims to be an old friend of Stanley's and seems to have a hidden agenda. So he seems to have something, a hidden work. McCann, Goldberg's partner, was more quiet and reserved than Goldberg. He is responsible for much of his violence in the play and seems to be to relish in his power over the other characters. So both Goldberg and McCain represent the oppressive forces that seeks to control and manipulate individuals for their own ends. Goldberg represents the brute force and violence that underlies McCain's psychological manipulation tactics. So, the final character of our play is Lulu, who was a young woman and a neighbor for the Bowles. So let us now look into the act-wise summary of our play, The Birthday Party. So Act 1 begins with Meg and Petty, a elderly married couple who was the owner of the boarding house. Meg and Petty Bowles are talking at the breakfast when Meg remarks that Stanley should be downstairs by now. Stanley, a man in his 30s, boarding with them. Meg fetches Stanley while he is eating breakfast. She tells him there are two new guests arriving. Stanley is suspicious of this as he has never seen any other guest but himself. Petty leaves for work and there is a knock on the door, and it is Lulu, a young lady, and who brings a package for Stanley and who's a neighbor for Bowles also. She asked Stanley if he had liked to go for a walk, but he denies. Lulu leaves then. There is another knock on the door, and this time Stanley hides in order to eavesdrop what is happening over there. The two guests has arrived. Goldberg and McCain enter and vaguely talk of a bureaucratic work they need to do now. They go to their room and Stanley opens his present, which is a small drum. Despite claiming to be a pianist, Stanley proceeds to bang on a drum instead of playing the piano. So, Act 1 represents Stanley's mental condition, who was disturbed by the arrival of two new guests to the boarding house. So Act 2, which is happening on the same day evening. So Stanley meets McCain in the living room. As they talk or have a conversation, McCain is reluctant to let Stanley leave and he becomes increasingly anxious. Stanley denies that it is his birthday and he says that Meg is crazy. Goldberg enters the room and the pair began to interrogate Stanley. Their questions seem strange. At one point, Stanley is accused of killing his wife. Stanley denies any knowledge of their accusation, but his behavior becomes erratic. As he became so much confused because of their question, he shows a change in his behavior. Meg appears and gives a generic toast to Stanley to start the celebration. When Lulu comes, she starts conversation with Goldberg right away. The party decides to play a game called Blind Man's Buff, in which one player must locate the other players while wearing a blindfold. When it is Stanley's turn, McCain places the drum before him and trips him. So trips here means catching someone's foot and making him fall on the ground. This creates an explosion in Stanley, and he tries to strangle Meg and then sexually assault Lulu. Goldberg and McCain pull Stanley off while he laughs in a mad way. So the final act, which begins like a first act with Petty and Meg at the breakfast table, Meg does not appear to remember the events of the previous evening, which created a lot of chaos and confusion. She leaves to go shopping, and Goldberg enters. Petty worries about Stanley, but Goldberg tells him he is suffering out of nervous breakdown. Goldberg claims that he and McCain will take Stanley to a doctor, though Petty is dubious. So he was not sure whether they were taking to a doctor or somewhere else. When Stanley comes downstairs, he can barely speak and his glasses are broken. Petty tries to prevent the pair from taking Stanley but is incapable of doing so. As they leave, Petty tells Stanley, Stan, do not let them tell you what to do. Meg returns, noticing that the car is gone, and asks after Stanley. Petty lies and says he is still sleeping. Meg talks about the success of the party, ignorant of Stanley's abdiction. Abdiction, nothing but taking away someone by force. Okay, so Stanley was taken away by Goldberg and McCain, but Petty was trying to prevent them, but he couldn't do it, and he wants him, don't hear to them, just take your own decision. So Meg conclude the play by saying that it was a lovely party. I haven't laughed so much for years. We had dancing, singing, and games. So with this quote, she concludes the play, and the play shows very much the characteristics of absurdity, which means nothing is connected with the logic. The main themes of the play, The Birthday Party, or existentialism. So existentialism is the central theme in many of absurdist play, and The Birthday Party is no exception to it. The play question the meaning of existence. It can be interpreted as an exploration of Stanley's struggle to find meaning in meaningless world. So next we have order and chaos. Many of the play's characters find comfort in the order. Okay, they were very much happy with the mundane or routine work, but when they are disturbed, it leads to a chaos. And the play explores what happened when chaos disturbed that order. So this is the next theme of the play, and we have use of language and silence. So Pinter is known for his use of cryptic, that is hidden meaning, and ambiguous language, as well as long pause and silence, which create a sense of uneasy and tension in the play. So next we have exploration of power dynamics. The arrival of Goldberg and McCain disturbs the balance of power in the boarding house, and the characters' relationships and identity are constantly questioned in the play. We have a theme of identity. So the instrument drum represent a way for Stanley to assert his individuality and resist the oppression forces that threatens to consume him. Okay, so as a pianist, he uses drum to represent his individuality. The character in the play are often uncertain of their own identities and struggle to define themselves in relation to others. Regarding the dark humor and absurdity, The play Birthday Party deals with the serious and unsettling themes. It is also marked by its dark humor and absurd situations. The tension and confusion created by the dialogues and action of the play can be seen on various and reflected the theme of absurdity of the human condition or the characters in the play. So these are the major themes in our play, The Birthday Party. Let us now recollect what we have seen in our today's class. So the birthday party key takeaways. The play The Birthday Party was written in the year 1957, is a play written by the English playwright Harold Pinter, and it has been described as a comedy of menace and part of the theater of absurd. So we have discussed detailedly about what we mean by the term comedy of menace, which was filled with laughter and comedy, and which will be followed by a disaster. And absurd means that relates to something that is not clear or logical. The plot centers around a birthday party held for Stanley Weber, which turns sinister after the arrival of two strangers. So the play revolves around the birthday party for Stanley Weber, who denies or protests not to celebrate his birthday, but it was organized by Meg Bowles, who was the owner of the boarding house, and it was completely a disaster for Stanley Weber. The major theme of the play are existentialism and the effect of chaos on order. So the purpose of living in this unrealistic world. So that is what we have discussed in the theme called existentialism and the chaos on order. They were very much happy to live a mundane or routine life. They doesn't want to change even the food that or breakfast that are taking on every day, or the food that are taking for the lunch or dinner. But when their routine was disturbed by some two strangers, the chaos was happening over there. Harold Pinter has won many awards for his playwriting, including the Nobel Prize for Literature in the year 2005. So, this is all about a play, The Birthday Party. So, we have discussed the overview of our play, The Birthday Party, and the introduction of our playwright, Harold Pinter, and we have seen the historical context of our play, an act wise summary of our play, The Birthday Party, and we have finally seen the major themes of our play. So, thank you, students, for listening to the class. Thank you.